Hi everyone, I'm Mandy Friedman, licensed professional clinical counselor and clinically certified domestic violence counselor, the creator of SNAP, Survivors of Narcissistic and Abusive Personalities. Today we're going to talk about betrayal trauma. Well, why do we need to talk about betrayal trauma? Maybe that's a good question to answer first. Well, I see betrayal trauma as a common factor among survivors of abuse and narcissistic abuse. Also, I see it as a common factor among clients that have complex PTSD. And talking about this can help you understand how betrayal trauma has affected your life and might even be affecting your recovery, and it might be affecting your current relationships. Let's make sure we give credit where credit is due. Betrayal trauma comes from Betrayal Trauma Theory, which was developed by Dr. Jennifer Freyd, F-R-E-Y-D, and she is with the University of Oregon. So she developed Betrayal Trauma Theory, and her definition of betrayal trauma is: betrayal trauma occurs when the people or institutions on which a person depends for survival significantly violate that person's trust or well-being. Now, in the SNAP program, we talk about betrayal trauma as extending a little bit far past that, meaning that we wouldn't necessarily be depending on someone for our literal survival, but it's definitely someone who is supposed to be on our team, someone who's supposed to support us, be faithful to us, someone who's supposed to have our best interest in mind, someone who has made a formal commitment before God to be a partner to you, someone who is a teacher or a coach that was supposed to help you and mentor you and nurture you along your way in your development and your life path. So in addition to this being someone that you rely on for survival, let's also go ahead and extend that to include people that we rely on for our upbringing, for our personal development, for our emotional and psychological safety, and things of that nature. Okay? So where is betrayal trauma coming from? In other words, who inflicts betrayal trauma? We have intimate partners, family, friends, the courts, church, police. Okay, so these are entities, institutions, individuals, or roles that their purpose is to protect, nurture, coach, mentor, be a role model, or make sure that your basic needs are met and that you are safe physically, emotionally, and psychologically. So people that will have a position of power or authority over you, or institutions that have power and authority over you and your circumstance. These are entities that are supposed to work in our best interest or in the best interest of our children. And often it is people in positions of power or authority that exploit that power and authority and use it against us. Why is betrayal trauma so impactful? Well, because it's a betrayal. It has to do with expectations, and then those expectations being subverted, and furthermore for the position to be weaponized. So the position of authority and power and access to a vulnerable individual or a vulnerable population, they use that access, weaponize it, and then they inflict damage in an institution or in a role when the opposite is supposed to happen. And so it's a mindfuck. Major mindfuck for people, that you believe that this person is your friend, you believe that this person is your partner and that they're on your team, and then you come to find out that that isn't true, and furthermore they're aiming to harm you. Okay, it's so impactful that it leaves a mark. Now let's also add into this re-victimization or re-traumatization. So we have the incident itself of betrayal trauma. So that would be a parent, a babysitter, or a caregiver, someone who used their intimate access. They used the intimate access that they had in order to play out whatever their motives are with you. And sometimes that is sexual molestation, sexual assault, and things of that nature. So let's say you had an uncle that was babysitting you on the weekends and he was also sexually molesting you. Well, that's a betrayal trauma because you thought that your uncle was a good guy and you thought your uncle was there to protect you and to be a male role model for you. But in fact, he is a predator and is a molester. And so you experience that trauma, that betrayal trauma, and then you go to get help. So let's say you go to your parent or your teacher or your school counselor and you tell that person what happened. That person's response to you is so important in the life path of someone who's a survivor of abuse or someone with complex trauma. That event right there is the thing that sort of will seal the deal on how you approach the remaining portions of your life and relationships and how you view yourself in relationship to other people, how you can trust people, whether you have a low self-esteem or high self-esteem. All of those things are affected by that moment. Obviously, the moment of being molested or sexually assaulted, but then finally, when you look for help from an institution, a role, a person who's supposed to hop in and protect you and to seek justice for you, and they don't. And often in that moment, we're re-victimized or re-traumatized by that entity, by that person, by the role, or by the institution. Like, for example, let's say that you were molested by someone who goes to your church. Or let's say that you're being abused by someone who goes to church there, you and your husband. And you've decided that you're going to end the abuse and end the relationship. And so you go to members of the church or leaders in the church and you explain to them your circumstances. And then they treat you as if that you're breaking up the family, that you are sinning against God, that you are being selfish, and that then they present scripture to try to convince you that you're supposed to stay with this person. That's a betrayal. You know, that's an entity that does not have your best interest in mind. They're more concerned about upholding their own beliefs and doctrine, and they're not educated even about these topics in some cases. And they will speak from a position of authority even though they aren't an authority on the topic. So if you go to a minister to talk about your addiction and that minister has no training on addiction, but they're speaking as an authority about addiction, you see what I mean? When we go for help or when we go for support, someone to listen to our experience and possibly help us seek justice or to protect us, and in that moment they let us down. Furthermore, they exploit us, they betray us again, they re-victimize us by blaming the victim. What were you wearing? What were you doing there? You were wasted, you were drunk. I told you not to go around that uncle, or whatever. They will blame the victim, and then you're let down and traumatized again by that other person who should have done the right thing to protect you. It's important for us to examine these incidents because we can link these incidents to experiences that we're having today in current relationships. If you find that you have a hard time trusting others, or if you're someone who has imposter syndrome, or if you're someone who always thinks that something bad is going to happen. When something good happens, you don't believe it. You're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that can come from betrayal trauma because you've developed the belief that people, places, and things cannot be trusted, and that despite doing the right things, bad things will happen. Survivors of betrayal trauma wind up blaming themselves for what happened to them. For more about this topic, look for my video called What is DARVO? D-A-R-V-O. This is a concept developed by Dr. Jennifer Freyd as well, having to do with how perpetrators of violence, perpetrators of sexual assault react when they are confronted about their misdeeds. and about the harm that they have done. When they're being called out and being held accountable for what they did, how they respond in that moment, there's research on that. So if you want to learn more, go to my video called What is DARVO? D-A-R-V-O. I hope this has been helpful. And keep in mind, therapists need affirmation too. So please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.